You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi guys, and you're back on with me, Mighty Blue, for another episode of the podcast, Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis, sponsored once more by Hiker Medals. With all the shows that we're doing on the Hiking Radio Network, sometimes I find it tricky to keep up with what I'm actually on. And while I'm mentioning the network, I wanted to let you know about a milestone we're going to reach the very day that this episode lands. With our 6 shows, all available at hikingradionetwork.com, we will be passing 1 million downloads this very day, Thursday the 13th of February. This show has about 85% of the downloads, but each show is added to the total. So thanks very much for your awesome support for the past 3 odd years. Today, to mark the milestone, we've got 2 fabulous guests. The first is actually Mr. Fabulous himself, Derick Lugo, a man known to many of you, I'm sure. The second, April May, shares a story that I found compelling when I spoke to her after seeing a post on Facebook, which I'm going to be reading out to you. April will be on after Mr. Fabulous. Finally, Paul Stutzman reaches almost the end of his journey in hiking through. I've decided to split this last chapter into 2 parts, adding Paul's moving epilogue to his Katahdin summit next week. This week, we'll see him through the 100-mile wilderness. But before all of that, as most of you already know, I went on my first AT hike in 2014. When I finished, my pride and joy was that photo at the top of Mount Katahdin. It was all I needed. Then at the end of last year, after my second through hike, I was given a medal by a friend of mine. Yep, an AT medal to mark my through hike. It was amazing. It was beautifully designed and executed, really solid and surprisingly heavy, very substantial, and it was engraved on the back, Mighty Blue. My medal was made by Hiker Medals, and they are sponsoring our show today. And it's not only medals for the AT, they have a beautiful selection with the PCT, the CDT, the Camino in Spain, the John Muir Trail, and loads more from all over the world. So if you want a special something for yourself or the hiker in your life, just go to hikermedals.com and tell them that Mighty Blue sent you. Thanks to those of you who've reached out to Hiker Medals. I appreciate the support, and so does Wim, who was on the show last week. Now, let's get fabulous. Here's Derick Lugo. Well, we've got a fabulous guest on the show today, and I know that he's fabulous because that's his trail name. It's Derick Lugo, or Mr. Fabulous. Hi, Derick. How are you?
Hey, how you doing, Steve?
I'm not too bad. Now, I've been aware of you for some time, and I've always wanted to know how you got to be Mr. Fabulous, because that's a pretty darn good name, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, just to start off, I did not name myself, but but if I was going to, it probably would be Mr. Fabulous.
Right.
So 2 quick stories on that. Well, when I first started my through hike, I'm what you call, or right before the trail, a metrosexual, where I like to groom myself,
Right.
wear designer clothes, look good. And when I went on the trail, I would, especially in the beginning, I would go to every stream and shave, give myself a bird bath, and I would joke around about wanting to carry a full-length mirror in my backpack so I can do those things. And another hiker was like, "You're a Mr. Fabulous." And I was like, dude, how is that going to sound if I go around calling myself Mr. Fabulous? Like, "Hi there, I'm Mr. Fabulous." It sounds
exactly.
kind of weird, creepy. So he's like, just try it, do it for a few days, see how it feels. I did. I was still kind of feeling, I wasn't comfortable using it, but so I would kind of apologize when people would ask me. I would go, first, I didn't name myself, but
very defensive.
But they call me Mr. Fabulous.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't getting the reaction I thought I would. I thought people would say, who are you to who is this guy? But people were just happy. They were laughing at it. They wanted to hear the story. And little by little, I started getting comfortable with it. And one day I was hiking by myself, and there was a group of elderly day hikers, about 10 of them. I stepped aside, let them walk by. They were like congratulating me and asking me how my through hike was going.
Sure.
And the last person was old. She was older than all of them. She must have been in her hundreds. She was walking with a cane, and she had an aide with her. And she came up to me and she asked me what my trail name was. Like, what's your trail name? And I was still not comfortable with it. And I was like, ma'am, they call me Mr. Fabulous. And without missing a beat, she was like, I've been waiting for Mr. Fabulous my entire life.
Oh, how cute is that?
And
You've got to keep the name after that.
Oh my God. And from that moment on, I was like, you know what? That's it. I'm keeping the name.
Absolutely right. Now, and how long did the self-grooming at all the rivers last? I bet it didn't last out of Georgia, did it?
I actually, now that I think of it, I did continue shaving. I didn't have a beard. I had a goatee. I let the goatee grow a little bit, but I still shaved and like bathed every single night throughout my entire through hike. After I through hike, that's when I started to like grow a beard. I remember one day I went like 3 days without bathing, and I was like, "What is going on?" You know. But no, I had those wipes. I would wipe myself every night before I went to bed. There was something about like after doing a long hike and I felt sticky, I couldn't sleep in my sleeping bag, so I kept it up.
Wow.
Throughout my entire hike. Yeah.
I'm kind of surprised. Yeah. Now, you did it back in 2012, and I'm sure the growth of numbers wasn't quite as bad then, but it was getting more and more popular, wasn't it? What was it that actually brought you to the trail in the first place?
Before I through hike, there was everyone knows about the Bill Bryson books, and I'm a big reader. So it came out maybe 20 years ago. It was out already for a couple years. Someone gave me the book. They were like, "Hey," they didn't tell me it was about the Appalachian Trail. They just said it's a funny read. Like, read this, you're gonna love it. It's hilarious.
Sure.
Yes, it was one of the funniest books I've ever read. But the one thing that stuck out was this trail that he made sound so hard and only a certain amount of people finish it.
Yeah.
And it stuck in the back of my mind. It was like one of those, it was like a pipe dream. Like wanting to run a marathon or travel around the world. I wanted to hike the Appalachian Trail.
Sure.
It was there, but I wasn't sure how I was going to do it. So that's how I found out about it.
It was certainly the book that got me to the trail as well. I think it came out about 1997, and I found it. And I noticed when I was on the trail, not that I felt embarrassed at all about saying I got on it because of the Bill Bryson book, but I found that opinion on the book was so divided, didn't you?
Yes, I found that a majority of people that were on the trail did read it, and it was one of the reasons why they were on the trail. Yeah. But I was surprised to find out that not everyone loved his depiction of the trail.
Yeah.
You know, he was kind of hard on it, and he wasn't a through hiker. No. But I appreciate the book for just bringing it to my attention.
Yeah, same here.
So whatever he says about the trail, it was a great read. It was fun, and he brought that to my life. So.
But had you been much of a hiker prior to that, or not at all? Because it's one of those things. Say a lot of us just literally get introduced to the trail and even the concept of long distance hiking by reading a book like that. So were you not a hiker at all?
When the first time I pitched a tent, the first time I camped out was at Springer Mountain. I didn't even know if I liked hiking. All I knew is that I wanted to get from Georgia to Maine. That was it. That was my challenge. That's what I read in the book. And that's what I was going to do. If I liked it, that was great. If I didn't, it was just, again, a competition for me. I was just going to go from one end to the other. Luckily, I fell in love with it within a week.
Oh, did you?
Yes, within a... Yes,
it's one of the questions I don't ask people, and I think about that more and more, that, how long does it take you to get into that? I used to ask about the rhythm of the hike. And I think it's once you get into the rhythm, that's when you start enjoying it, isn't it?
Yes. But I knew right away that I was going to spend at least 5. It took me 6 months, but I knew it was going to take me. I was going to be in the woods for at least 5 months.
Yeah.
So when I first started, I started doing 8 miles. I did the approach trail, and then I did another 8 miles. Because again, I didn't know how to hike.
Right.
So I wanted to take my time. I was a runner. I still am a runner. So I would stretch before and after. And I knew that this was going to be a 5-month ordeal, not a 5-day ordeal. So I didn't want to hurt myself. I want to figure it out and go with it. And what I didn't realize was that the AT was more than just the trail. It was the people that was on the trail.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And they helped me along the way. They may have thought I wasn't going to make it. Like my first day, this one hiker, I was pitching my tent and I was trying to get the stakes in the ground and I couldn't figure it out. And this guy came with a rock, tacked them all down, looked at me, tossed the rock and walked away. And I was like, dude, you're a genius. That's like, that rock just saved me. So I grabbed the rock and put it in my backpack. No, I'm totally kidding.
Cool. Yeah.
But there was a lot of lessons there's a chapter in my book I call Lessons on Springer Mountain. And there was a lot of things that I learned, how to use my miniature stove, how to hang my food, how to use my water pump. I had all this gear and I didn't know how to use it.
Wow. I didn't realize that. So you didn't even test any of the gear out before just to check it out, see if it works or anything.
Long story short, I had decided within about a week and a half, that I was going to through hike. So I would go to the outfitters. I went up to the first person I saw and I said, hey, I'm going to through hike. And she turned around and she was like, I don't work here. So then I was so excited. I didn't know who I was talking to. So the guy that was helping me was a through hiker. Told him I wanted a backpack. I'm through hiking and I needed a backpack and other gear. And he asked me what kind of backpack I use. Told him, I don't know what you're talking about. He realized that I'd never through hiked. He looked at me like I was crazy, still helped me. But I just had this strong feeling that I need to do it. On the trail, same thing. I had people saw from the beginning that I had no experience. It was lit on my forehead, like a marquee, that I didn't know what I was doing. But they helped me. A month would go by, I would see another through hiker that helped me that first day, and they were like, "Dude, you're still on the trail." They're like,
"Did you?" So with your lack of experience, and I was exactly the same. I'd never hiked before. I'd never put up a tent before. So it's a very humbling experience, I think, to do that. And so did your family express doubts about you going before you went, or they know you and they think you're the sort of person who could do this?
They didn't know what I was doing. My brother actually wanted me to carry a machete with me. He was like, dude, take a machete with you. They come in small sizes. You can strap it to your chest and you can go. I'm like, dude, I can't do that. That's not what I'm going to do. My mom couldn't understand me. But since I was a kid, I've always done stuff like this. Not hiking, but just spur of the moment, just something. She knows I have wacky ideas. I love to travel. Yeah. So my family and friends thought, no. My friends in New York City, they were like, dude, how are you going to bathe? We know you, your manicures. How are you going to get that? Yeah. And no, they thought I was going to be back within a few weeks.
Yeah, sure. Isn't it amazing how people do doubt you when you're going? There's no question. And so how were you able to take 6 months or whatever it was going to be out of your life? Because, this is not easy for everybody to take that time out of their life, is it? There's relationships, there's money, there's jobs, all those things. How did you work that out?
At the time, I was living in Italy for almost a year. Oh. And I came back to New York City to work on a project. And I was here for about 3 months, didn't have to go back to Italy. What I was working on in Italy was done. And in order for me to move there, I had subletted my apartment. I sold just about everything I owned. I didn't have a steady job. I had enough money saved.
Right.
So when I came back, I had wanted to kind of discover more of the U.S. because I had traveled all over Europe and I had some European friends asking me about America, and I realized that I didn't travel a lot of the U.S. Yes. So I wanted to do that. And I was laying in bed and I was like, what do? Do I rent a car and travel around, the U.S. and then it hit me. I was like, the Appalachian Trail.
Wow. So
I had the time. I wasn't living anywhere. I was staying with friends. And I had saved enough money and I decided, okay, I'm going to take these 5 months. I wanted 5 months. I ended up doing 6 months because I just stretched out a little bit because I was having so much fun. Yeah, had nowhere else to go. And that was it just fell. It was the right time. Everything fell into place, and it was let's see, it was February. So yes, it was a few days for spring. So beginning of March, I was like, I'm going to do it. Got my gear, and that was it.
So you're getting your gear. Did you have any idea of the sort of stuff you might need, or did you just simply take advice from the REI people?
I actually Googled. I saw a video or a short or something, and I just Googled like what gears to use.
All right.
When through hiking, and I knew I needed, sleeping bag, tent. I needed to eat, water pump, to filter my water.
Yeah.
Just the right things. And I tell you, I lucked out that everything that I used was exactly what I needed, and it took me throughout the whole 6 months.
I was going to wonder whether you made any mistakes in your gear, but you were quite happy with pretty much everything you took. And
everything.
At that time, I mean, I'm sure there was definitely a push towards lighter and lighter gear. What was your starting weight, do you know, when you got to spring?
My starting, it was funny because you know how they say, like, when you first through hike, your pack is always heavier. My pack was like 42 pounds.
So was mine. Mine was exactly 42 pounds.
42 pounds. And I had I had 2 weeks worth of food. And, I was like, I'm not starving out here. It was pretty heavy. I had several liters of water, not knowing that there was many streams I was going to pass along the way, especially in the beginning. So yes, it was pretty heavy. Then it got lighter. I cut back on the water, knowing that I can get it, and there was a lot of water sources along the way. So it was about the low 30s, averaging throughout the.
That's not too bad. Yeah. But these days, I mean, I've been talking to someone the other day. He hikes with a base weight of about between 7 and 9 pounds. I just don't see how people do that.
I don't know. Even now, when I do a weekend hike, my pack is still kind of heavy. I don't know how they do it.
Well, you've got all your manicure kit in there, haven't you, Derick? So
my full-length mirror. Yeah, of course.
Now, it's been said before, and I'm absolutely not going to go on about this, but it is striking how few people have colour hiked the long trails. And we had Daniel White, the Black Action on the show a couple of years ago, and he spoke to the subject. But I wonder why this appears to be predominantly a white man's activity. Do you have any thoughts on that at all?
I actually did not know that was a thing until I started hiking.
It was pretty obvious as soon as you got out there, though, wasn't it?
No, I'm from New York City.
True.
And it's like the melting pot of the world.
Yeah.
I don't see, and it's going to sound cheesy, but I don't see color. My friends are from all over the world. So when I started, it didn't cross my mind. I was just hiking, but people were coming up to me and they were saying, it's great that you're out here. And we love that you're here. And I'm like, me too. I love that you're here too. Not understanding it. And then it came out, they're like, dude, you're the only Black person on the trail. And I'm like, there's no way.
Yeah.
There's no way that's a thing.
Did you meet any others?
So I started looking out. I was like, I'm looking out for these peeps. And I would see a Black hiker, but they were day hiking. Maybe a handful of Black hikers, but only day hikers. I did not see one other Black through hiker at all.
But you know what? Once you get on the trail, and anybody, I don't think people realize this, but in so many different aspects of life, it is such a great leveler. And I think that acceptance, which seems to be the most obvious expression of a trail's personality, everybody accepts everybody as they are, don't they?
And that's what I was going to say, that people embraced me. It wasn't, people were coming up to me and saying, hey, I was hiking the Smokies one day, and, Smokies has a bunch of different trails. This older guy came by and he stopped me. He was like, hey, I've been hiking all these trails. He was about I don't know, in his 60s or something like that. And he's like, I've been hiking these trails for many, many years, 17 years. And he's like, you're the seventh Black through hiker I've seen in all those years. And people were saying this, no one was being malicious. They were just embracing me. And I just felt the love. People were just so happy that I was on the trail. They wanted me to share this story. They were like, dude, you got to tell people. And especially after I tell them I'm from New York City.
Sure.
First time I hiked was on the trail. Pitched my tent was at Springer Mountain. And you're right. Everyone embraced me. They helped me without judging, without judgment.
Isn't that cool?
They may have been dude, in thinking about this dude is going to get hurt. But No one ever voiced it, not once. And when I finished, I realized that must have been the case. And talking to my friends now, they're like, yeah, dude, like we didn't know, but there was something about you that we really dug, and we knew that you were going to go far. So a lot of it is attitude also. Like I stayed positive because I had so much against me. I had so much going against me. Like I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know how to use my gear. And the one thing was I had to accept the trail for what it was going to give me, like, and all the weather I was going to be walking in, and stay positive and just meet people. I love talking to people. If you know me, you know, like I could sit down and talk to you about the Appalachian Trail forever. And I just knew when I went in there, that was had to be my attitude, and it took me a long way.
Yeah, well, your positivity is something that definitely shines through, and many people, including me, stand on the top of Springer and wonder, what on earth was I thinking? But you told me previously you didn't have any doubts at all. What made you think you could do it? You said a positive attitude. You need almost more than that, don't you?
You need a drive.
Yeah.
You need to be set mentally. And when I say this, there was one hiker I met at Springer Mountain, and he was talking everything AT. And I was like, dude, this is like the spokesperson for the Appalachian Trail. Like, I was like, he's going to make it to Katahdin in like 2 months. And he's going to go back and hike back down Springer Mountain. I thought he was going to make it. I saw him 3 days later, not 3 days. It was about a week later. I saw him on the trail. It was raining, and he was with a group, and the leader of his group was saying, you know what, we got to stay positive, embrace the rain, embrace the rain. I was like, yes, embrace the rain. I saw the other guy that I thought was going to make it. I'm not going to name him, and I saw him, and he looked so defeated.
Yeah.
He looked so defeated. He was just like, I said, hey, how you doing? He was just grumbling. Like, I don't know what he said. His hair was all wet. He looked like a poor wet dog. It was like the worst. And within I think it was like a couple weeks, he was off the trail.
Yeah. Yeah.
And everyone should hike their own hike. But when it comes to planning, that was one thing. I didn't plan it very well, but I knew since I didn't plan it well mentally, I had to be there. I had to know that I was going to hike in snow. I was going to hike in rain. I was going to hike in like the cold weather. And the cold weather, I don't play. My peeps, like we like the tropics. And I was not having it, but I stuck with it. So you need to stay positive. Mentally, you need to be there.
I agree. But then you actually told me the other day when we spoke that something happened. I think it was at the Red Barn or, the Overland Shelter, when you had a moment of doubt. Tell us about that and how you overcame that.
Oh, yes, Over Mountain Shelter. So I was there. It was in April, and it was freezing. That night, I had to pitch my tent, and I don't recommend people do this, but it was so cold that I had to pitch my tent in the barn.
Right.
And people started doing it.
There's enough room in there, isn't there, for that?
Well, then other people started to do it, and it was more than enough for everyone. If there wasn't, we would take our tent down and make room for other people. But yes, we took care of each other. It was freezing. I woke up that morning. My water bladder was frozen. My socks were like cardboard, really hard. It made the night before seem like a cool breeze. I can't even tell you how cold it was. I didn't know how it was going to start. I couldn't put my boots on because it was so hard. I thought I was going to break my toes. But everyone was packing up around me. One of my friends came up to me and she was like, it's going to be okay. You'll make it. I'm like, I'm sure it'll be okay, but this cold, I don't know. And this other hiker was like, dude, one step at a time. That's how you're going to make it. One step at a time. Mm-hmm. And I stuck in my mind. Everyone left. I started hiking, and we hiked in twos. But I'm not a morning person. I work at night, and I was always the last one to leave camp. So everyone had left before me. I'm hiking by myself. It's snowing really hard. The wind is blowing, and I can barely see footprints, and I lose it. I lose the foot. I don't know where I'm at.
Oh, God.
I stop, and I look around. It's just like a sheet of white. That's all I see. And I'm freaking out in my mind. I'm just freaking out. I'm like, how am I going to get out of this? How am I going to get out of this?
Yeah, it's intimidating, definitely.
Very. And something told me just take a step to the left. I took a step to the left, and then I just started seeing a slight footprint and just started following that and kept going. I don't know, what happened. I'm not trying to say, like, it was the universe, something. It was the AT gods that was looking out for me. And then eventually I found someone and we started hiking together. And it was like the scariest thing I've ever done. But I knew when I was on there, that was the only time where I thought this could be it.
Yeah.
But then once I collected myself, stopped and just started took that one step and just try to clear my mind. That's when it started all falling into place, and I knew I was going to be safe. But for a minute, I thought I was done. Like, I was thinking about like my friends that are like at home,
yes,
sitting on a couch watching TV, and I could be one of those people. But then I said, yeah, but then I wouldn't have a story to tell. I wouldn't have this adventure.
Damn right.
And I decided, you know what, this is where I need to be.
Yeah. Well, look, I've been reading a book on the show called Hiking Through by Paul Stutzman. And I just this episode I've just published, he's just gone through the White Mountains. What were they like for you? Because I found that was such a step up from everything else, didn't you?
The White Mountains. Now, I was averaging about, 15, 20 miles a day. And then once I hit the whites, I was doing like 6.
Yeah. On a good day.
On a good day, because it's just so steep. Yeah. And really, when it's wet, really dangerous.
Yeah.
It was the hardest for me, but it was the most enjoyable. And the rewards I got when I hit like a summit was just, and I lucked out because I felt like every time I hit top of the mountain, the clouds cleared up and it was bright and I got to see a really nice view. So not many people had that experience. But yes, the whites, they were my favorite. I loved Vermont and New Hampshire. That was my favorite section of the Appalachian Trail.
I think the last 2 states for me, I think the New Hampshire and Maine were absolutely my favorites. I just enjoyed those so much. And it was actually just reading that story the other day about the whites, just brought it all back to me, how glorious it is. They always say that, by the time you've done 80% of the miles, you've only done 20% of the effort. I didn't really feel it was that way, although I thought that you're so fit by then, you can step up to that additional effort, can't you?
Yes, without a doubt. But I was always careful because when I was hiking, it was, for some reason, well, it was raining, but it was wet and it was very steep. And I wanted to watch my steps. So it took me a bit longer than others. There were people that were just storming through there. And I just, again, wanted to be careful because I'm still through hiking. I'm not doing a day hike. I didn't want to fall off and like, where's Derick? I wasn't rolling like that. So you
got to watch what you're doing there, haven't you? Really
exactly. So I was definitely a bit more careful when I hit the whites, but it was very rewarding and beautiful. Yes, without a doubt.
And what about that most special of the days, the summit of Katahdin? What was that like? Were you glad that it was over, or were you excited about the journey, or do you feel accomplished? What was the overriding feeling for you?
There was a lot of emotions going on.
Sure.
I got to, what's the last town in Maine before you summit?
Millinocket.
I got there on a Thursday and I summit on a Monday.
Oh, wow.
Because, they were having the annual end of trails parade. Right. So I'd stayed that weekend just to savor what I was doing,
of course.
And think about it. A part of me was happy that I was done and I was actually successful at my goal to get to Katahdin. But then another part of me was I can't believe it's over. What am I going to do now? I didn't even know how I was going to get back home.
Oh, really? You hadn't planned that?
I did not even plan that. I just planned to get to the summit. I teared up. I was crying. I remember I started with a group of people, and I'm not a purist. I don't even know what a purist is.
It's your hike. It's your hike.
It's my hike. But I felt like I needed to have my backpack with me and my poles. And I started off without my poles, and I hiked about 1.5 miles with the group. And then I said, guys, I got to go back and get my poles. Not that I was
really?
Not that I was going to use them, but I needed them with me. There was just a piece of, again, it was everything I had with me. Every single day, every step, they were with me. Yeah. And I couldn't have made it without those trekking poles. And I kept them in the back of I kept them in my backpack, and they came with me. I don't know. It may sound weird, but it needed to come with me. So I went back, grabbed my poles, and I started hiking by myself.
Right.
and taking everything in. I would stop and just look around.
Did you enjoy that, Derick? Did you enjoy finishing by yourself?
Yes, I did. I
Very
did.
interesting.
I didn't plan it that way, but I'm glad I did, because I was able to sit down, feel the breeze hit my face, look at all the leaves when I was climbing, like just all the rocks, and I just took every little detail in, because I didn't know when I was going to be here again. This was it.
Sure.
And when I got there, everyone was waiting for me. There was they were filming a documentary, so he captured my emotions. And as soon as I saw the sign, because there was a few like false summits. I don't know if you noticed that, but there was one time where I was like, okay, this is it. And then nothing. So I hit a couple times where I'm like, this is it. And
Yes.
and I'm like, okay, that's it. I'm not even whatever. So I saw it and I was like, this can't be it. This can't be it. And I realized it was people there, saw the sign, and it just hit me. I was like, I'm not going to cry. I'm not crying. What do? I cry in front of everyone.
So right, snap.
And then, being the Mr. Fabulous that I am, I grabbed my bandana, I wiped down the sign and I gave it a kiss. And I hugged it and just started taking like summit photos, just raised my arm and just kind of like embraced the moment.
And then immediately, though, it's over, isn't it? Don't you feel it? It's over.
Not really,
Shockingly, it's over.
You got to go back down.
Yeah. Apart from the pain of getting back down again, but once you go home, the end of that day, you go home and it's over. It is almost an abrupt ending, don't you think so?
It's done. For me, I kept running it through my mind over and over. And by then I knew I was going to write about it.
All right.
So it wasn't really the end for me, because for the next year and a half, 2 years, I was reliving my hike.
Yeah, because I saw in a few Facebook posts, you mentioned that you're writing a book, and well, that book is here now, isn't it? I mean, it took quite a while to do it. What was your approach that you took to writing your story?
About halfway through my through hike, people were asking me to write about my story. And I've been writing since I was in my, I would say teenager. I was going to say early 20s, but late teens. Poems, short stories. I've had a journal since my early 20s. And I knew I was going to write about it. So I took when I got off the trail, a hiking friend of mine, his parents let me stay in their cabin for 3 months just to start writing my story.
Nice. What a lovely way to do it.
Right? Isn't that where writers go to write books? They go to cabins. Writers or like teenagers go to like get murdered or something. That's what cabins are for. So I spent 3 months at a cabin in Pennsylvania, just writing every day about my through hike, reliving it. And the first draft was just off the top of my head, because it wasn't, I had just gotten off the trail. And then after that, I went through my journals, my photos, and kind of added a few more things. But the reason why it took so long was because I just didn't want to write a journal. I wanted to write a story, and I wanted people, when they read my story, felt like they were hiking the trail with me. And I wanted them to feel, and people that had never hiked a trail or want to hike the trail, I wanted them to be there with me. And I couldn't just write a quick book and then send it out there. I wanted the message to be clear, and I wanted it to reach a lot of people. So I took a year and a half, 2 years, just focusing on writing it, revising it, going over it, over and over it. And then getting out there and talking about the trail. Because I didn't expect to write a book and have people buy it. Like, who's this guy? Never written a book before. Or first book published. I've written several things, but first book published. Who's going to read a story from someone they've never heard of? So I decided to do a lot of talks. Luckily, I met a few people from the ATC. They sent me to a lot of hiker events. And then AMC. So by the time this got published, I did a lot of talks. And one of the reasons why I got published was because I already had a history of, there's this guy that loves the Appalachian Trail. He has a voice, and he's been sharing it for years. So then by then, I would say 2 years ago, that was when things started to happen as far as finding publishers and things like that. Last year, was when I got signed with AMC to publish this book. But the reason why it took so long was because I wanted to have a voice. I wanted to put myself out there. And I knew, and I read an article about how to market your message, your story, your book, whatever you're doing. You need to start years before it actually gets published. So I kept that in mind. So I was okay. I was okay with it taking a few years before the story came out.
And you mentioned that you give talks now and about hiking and your journey and whatever and your message. What are you saying to the audience? What are you trying to? And as an African American man, do you see yourself as a role model for that community, or are you trying to speak to a colorblind audience?
Colorblind audience.
Are you trying to bridge that gap? Are you trying to get more people to do it in your, as you call them, your peeps?
What I'm trying to do is bring attention to this wondrous activity to people that have never heard about the AT.
Sure.
Because when I first started, I knew nothing about it except for what I read in the book. My friends knew nothing about it. The only thing, my friends were pronouncing it wrong. They were calling it Appalachia, and now that I through hiked and I wrote a book, now they think they're experts. They're like, yeah, my friend wrote this book. No, I want to reach the little Derick, the little kid. Okay, if you look at the cover, there's this guy with dreadlocks. If you see me, I don't look like your typical thru hiker. Yes, I want people, when they see the cover, when they hear me speak, say not that he's a black hiker, but he's someone that did something out of his comfort zone, stepped out of the box and did this thing. And I want people, could be white, black, Asian, this kid that never heard about the AT, to see this book, to see me and say, hey, if he can do something like that, I can accomplish something that I've always wanted to accomplish.
Cool.
So that's my message. I don't have to tell people that, I'm a black Latino and I was the only one, the only black person that season. I don't need to do that. My story tells it. My story shares my message, shares my story. And it's more than just being black.
And to a degree, though, people, they get over that straight away when they see the cover, don't they? I presume.
It's funny because a friend of mine shared my book with one of her friends. She said, hey, I have a hiker friend that wrote a book and I'm going to send it to you. And when she got it, she saw the cover and she was like, I think you sent me the wrong book. It's like people don't expect it. But I like that because it's a striking cover and it draws people. They see it. And then also, the title is The Unlikely Thru Hiker, but it's more than just hiking. It's about relationships. It's about stepping out of your comfort zone. It's about reaching a goal that maybe others thought you couldn't reach, even yourself, even you thought you couldn't reach, but you do. So it's layers. And I want people to understand that yeah, it's a hiking book and it takes you through the Appalachian Trail, but it goes deeper than that. It goes through what I was thinking, and I talk a little bit about my New York life. And how this is very out of the ordinary for me.
Yeah.
And I want people to feel like that they can reach that goal. And it doesn't matter what other people say, what you look like, what they think, you can do these things.
And talking of doing things, it's been 8 years now. Are you planning any other long distance hike in the future?
I cannot believe it's been 8 years.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I feel like now I have a responsibility too. Every time I do a talk, that's one of the biggest questions. It's what's the next thing I'm going to write about, and what's my next adventure? This year, it's all about book tour, and wherever I go,
nice.
If it's a hiking town, I want to go hiking.
Mm-hmm.
I want to hike with peeps. And this is the hiking community is amazing. And once you meet somebody that's a hiker, thru hiker, doesn't matter, day hiker, your family instantly, which is something I've never had before. So I do plan to continue sharing this message, sharing this book. This year, I'm actually focusing on writing a children's book version of The Unlikely Thru Hiker. Mm-hmm. And then the following year, I'm going to plan another thru hike. It'll be in 2022, it'll be 10 years that I hiked the Appalachian Trail. So I'm thinking of doing the PCT in 2022.
And the CDT in 2032, no doubt. So,
I'm not going to wait that long to do it if I do plan to do it. But I do want to do, and they don't need to be extreme hikes. I want to continue just hiking. I hike the Bear Mountain all the time. I did this one hike from New York
with
City.
With your brother.
Yeah.
That was excellent. I really, that was a little video, wasn't it, as well?
Yeah, the ATC did a short film called Trail Brothers, and
I'll put a link in the show notes for that, because I thought that was really good.
That'd be cool. Yeah, I introduced this is the same guy that wanted me to bring a machete and didn't trust that I would survive the Appalachian Trail.
And did he gain a better understanding of what you'd done by coming with you on that trip?
Well, he saw that I survived, first of all.
Without machete, yeah.
Without a machete. And then he saw my passion for it and how I kept sharing it. And he was like, you know what? And my brother's like this. He's like, you know what? If you can do it, I can do it. And then so we got some gear and we didn't do a small hike, start small. He's like me, hard-headed. And he was like, look, man, if you're going to hike to Bear Mountain, it's a 5-day hike. I've never hiked before, but I'm going to do it. I can do it. So we went from the George Washington Bridge all the way to Bear Mountain. It took us 5 days, 50 miles. I could have done it sooner, but I wanted to take my time with my brother. I didn't want to rush it.
Sure.
The ATC did a short film on it and it came out pretty well. You can see his reaction to it. He's more of a camper, not a hiker. Right. I want to do many miles. He wants to just get there and then just camp out and just lay out by the lake. So we're different like that. And it's very hard for me to kind of cut down on my miles to just appease him. But I'd rather do that than not have him out there.
But it's all about hiking your own hike, as I'm sure.
It's about hiking your own hike. Yes.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm so glad you came on because I've heard about you for a long time and we haven't spoken before. And you've certainly got a story to tell. And I'm looking forward to reading the book. And I wish you well with it.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Okay, no worries. Take it easy. Bye
Thank
then.
You. Bye.
You've got to say, a colourblind, metrosexual black guy on a trail is not your run-of-the-mill hiker. Derick was constantly interesting, though, embracing the trail and with his afterlife as a writer, continuing to spread good news about the trail. Watch the little film that the ATC put together about the hike with his brother. It is really touching. Once again, I want to thank those of you who have supported the show in the past couple of weeks. There's a small donate button on the Mighty Blue podcast page, and I'm going to be adding one to the Hiking Radio Network site in the next few days. This support has really encouraged me as I'm now producing 4 full shows a week these days. It's a hobby, I love it, but I needed your financial support and I'm grateful that some of you continue to give it. Cheers. By the way, while I remember, Paul Stutzman's book, Hiking Through, comes to its conclusion next week. So I've been looking around for another book to read. And more on the off chance than anything else, I emailed Ben Montgomery. Do you remember him? He's the guy who wrote Grandma Gatewood's story and asked if it would be possible that I could read that on the show. Guess what? He said yes. So from 2 weeks' time, I'll be reading about the amazing woman who became a true icon of the Appalachian Trail. I cannot wait. Now, this little item is something I got from a Facebook post by a young Canadian woman. I saw it a few weeks ago and I was really shocked, but inspired at the same time. So I reached out to her. Her name is April May, and this is what I read. Hiking saved my life. First photo before, second photo after. Most people don't know this because I've always been too ashamed to put it out there. Today I'm telling my story. I was not an overweight child, adolescent, teen or young adult. I'd always been very fit and active, and it wasn't until I entered a toxic long-term relationship with my ex-girlfriend at the age of 25 that I began to gain serious weight. Over the course of a 10-year relationship, I gained over 230 pounds. I tried every diet gimmick to lose weight, including surgery, but nothing stuck. I was stuck. It wasn't until I finally realized that there's no such thing as a quick fix or a magic pill. It wasn't until I realized that I needed to get off my ass and move my body that I began to lose weight and keep it off. It started with a single step on a beautiful trail surrounded by nature. That step turned into 5, then 10, and so on. Next thing I knew, I was hiking miles upon miles, enrolling in running clinics and interval training. I bought a bike and began cycling. I joined a gym and began to train. I found myself scrambling mountaintops and pushing my body until I was certain I couldn't possibly continue. Then I would push myself just a little bit further. It took me 2 years to lose 200 pounds. It's been 4 years since the beginning of my weight loss journey, and I've consistently maintained. It started with a single step on a beautiful trail. and I haven't stopped since. Well, that was something, wasn't it? And when I saw that, I decided I wanted to try to speak to the young lady who posted that. And this is April May. Hi, April. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thank you.
Well, you know what? When I read that, I thought, oh my gosh, that must have taken some guts to put that out. Why did you decide to do it?
Because I knew some people who were struggling with losing weight, and I was hoping to be able to help inspire them.
I'm sure. But that moment you put something out there, what was the reaction? I've seen some of the reaction, which was, to me, looked all positive. Have you found it positive so far?
Yes, extremely positive. I was worried about that, right? Because whenever you put anything out there on the internet, you're susceptible to some negative feedback, right?
Yeah, damn right. Yeah. So did people reach out to you?
Yes. A lot of people that I know through hiking forums, inboxed me and were like, your story really inspired me. And makes me, I've always wanted to get out there and go hiking. And now I know that I can do it.
And don't you think that's the most powerful thing? The fact that I've had this several times, people think, and they said that until they listened to my show, they thought it was just young kids who did this. Young kids straight out of school, and yet there's an old git like myself. I'm 67 now. I'll be 68 this year. I've done it twice in my 60s. So
that's amazing.
So I think what you put out there, you help some people realize that it isn't just for youngsters, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So was there a specific moment that you realized that you needed to do something? We told the story of what happened. Was there one moment you thought, I just cannot carry on like this?
Yes, definitely. It was when I was trying to climb the stairs, walk up the stairs at my house,
right,
to get to the second floor.
Right.
And a couple steps up, I'm like, I can't get up these stairs. Like, this has got to stop. Like, you can't keep doing this to yourself. And I was looking for so many like miracle cures kind of thing. And,
sure.
I just realized in that moment, like, I need to move. I need to get up off my butt and go move.
Or your ass, as you said. But all right, whichever you prefer. It's okay. It's okay. Either of those are fine. It's not a problem. Yeah. So you knew you needed to do something. Did you have any chronic health problems at the time? Did you get, for example, diabetes or anything like that? What happened?
No, luckily no diabetes, but I was diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis.
Right.
And the amount of weight on my joints was making it so much worse. I was in pain all the time.
Right.
Constant pain. So I was like, this is not helping. This is, I felt like I was 90 years old. I could barely move.
Sure. But like most people, I guess, if you're heavy, I mean, I was heavy when I started both my hikes. I'm getting heavy again now, unfortunately. But most people don't know what to do next. You say you've got to move. How did you actually start? What was the start? Did you go to the gym? Did you go start hiking? Because you said the first day was out on a trail, didn't you?
Yes. We have a wonderful trail here in Saskatoon, the city I live in, and it runs along the river. So I was like, I used to hike in my early years before I gained the weight, and I was like, I really enjoyed it. So I was like, I'm going to do it. I just got it in my head that I'm going to do this. So I drove to the trailhead and I sat there for an hour.
Yeah, that doesn't lose you any weight, by the way.
No. Before I got the courage to like get out, and I was always worried about people making fun of me, so
was that a big issue? Is that a big issue for bigger, because you've been a bigger person? Because I've seen both pictures. You're tiny now, and yet you weren't in those days. Was that a big issue for you? How you felt other people looked at you?
Oh yes, definitely. I didn't like to eat in restaurants. I would eat at home, or get takeout, stuff like that. Because I always felt I was being judged. Yeah.
And you know what? You probably were. But one thing I found, certainly when I went hiking, how unjudgmental people are.
Right? The hiking community is amazing.
Yeah. And did you embrace that straight away? Did you understand that straight away?
No, it took a while. I think it wasn't until I started joining some Facebook forums that deal with hiking and backpacking that I was like, wow, this community is amazing.
Yeah, but even some of those forums get pretty crappy sometimes as well, don't they?
Yes.
Yeah, it can. But when you're out on the trail, I said last year,
Oh,
I
meeting
don't think.
people.
Yeah, when you're out and you meet people, they're nothing like they are on Facebook. They're much better.
Right. Much
Yeah.
better.
Yeah. So one thing I've noticed though that normally women don't lose weight as fast as men when they're hiking. How immediate was your weight loss, or did you just feel better?
I started feeling better. Like that first day when I went out on the trail, I only made it 10 steps. Okay. And then I sat, kind of on the side of the trail and just kind
Sure.
of breathed in the air. And I was like, okay, got to make those 10 steps back. And then I just kept doing it every day. I went for a walk on the trail. And
Wow.
yeah, so it was a gradual loss.
How did you build up then? So you went because you said so 10 steps was literally your first hike.
Yes, that was my first hike.
Man. And how did you feel after those 10 steps?
I was sore and I was out of breath, being
Wow.
so heavy, right? But
Sure.
I felt amazing being out there. The sun was shining, the birds were chirping. The trail wasn't very busy. It was very peaceful. And I was like, I like this. I like how this feels.
Yeah.
Even though I was sore and tired, it was a good feeling.
But I don't know what the trail's like. Is it a flat trail or are there hills on it as well?
Oh, there's micro hills. Like
Right.
we're a very flat province here in Canada, a lot of farmland, right? So it's
Right.
not the elevation that I crave, but
Yeah, well, you know what? You didn't need that. That would have probably put you off totally to go up mountains straight away, wouldn't it?
yeah,
So that probably wouldn't have been a good thing anyway, would it? So
right.
did you have anybody around you at the time who was encouraging you, or did you find that people were negative, or were they positive, the steps you were taking?
That they were for the most part positive. I had some people who weren't very nice about it. So, but that's okay because I don't talk to them anymore.
Yeah, right. You can,
You know,
you can always choose your friends, can't you?
right?
Yeah. But did that become important to you? I always think that, to do some of these things, you do need some encouragement sometimes because this can be quite difficult. Did you get solace from people or did you get help from people?
I did to a degree. I think I found my solace within nature, and that's what really helped me the most.
Sure.
Having wonderful and supportive friends and family around you is very important.
Sure.
But it's also something that I wanted to do on my own.
Yeah, and that does become important. So
Yeah.
did you actually? So once you got hiking more than 10 steps,
Yes.
and you were doing mile, and did you do any really long days?
Yes. I got up to the point where I went from those 10 steps to hiking 18 miles a day.
Oh my gosh!
Yes.
Wow. So I mean, because I've been heavy and I've been not so heavy, but I've basically been heavy most of my life. So when you do lose that weight, you really feel it straight away, don't you?
Yes.
And so how long was it before you were able to do 18 miles? So you said you went most days. So how long did it take you to get
It
in some
took
sort
me
of shape?
about a year
Right.
to be able to build up that endurance.
And you lost 200, you say you lost 200 pounds?
200. I had gained 230 and I still kind of have some that I need to lose.
Not in looking at your pictures, you don't. No, trust me on that one.
Well, there are other issues with weight, a huge weight loss, like excess skin and stuff, right?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Yeah. And I done that. Even I got that this year. I lost 50 pounds on my hike this year.
Wow, that's amazing.
First time I lost 60 pounds. But yeah, but my 50 pounds, and I knew that my stomach just disappeared, and then suddenly my skin and my stomach was still there. So that wasn't great at all. I didn't like that at all. So happily, I put that back on. So, so apart from your weight,
Right.
how else has hiking and your exercise in general changed you as a person? Do you think?
Oh, well, I'm a lot healthier,
Of course.
and I'm definitely happier.
Right.
I have a lot more energy.
Mhm.
And I find instead of like hiding out at home, I'm out a lot and I'm doing
Right.
things with friends. I'm,
Right.
more social.
But it is difficult to keep weight off? I mean, because I lost weight dramatically fast, not as dramatically fast as you, because if you lost 200 pounds over 2 years, that's a huge amount.
Yeah.
How do you maintain? Did you change your diet? And was it diet that put it all on in the first place?
Yes. When I first started losing weight, it was purely diet. And I lost about 50 pounds. It was pretty good. But then I hit a plateau where I was not, doesn't matter how well I ate or how little I ate, I was not losing the weight. And it just comes down to moving your body. I mean, even now, I don't worry as much about what I eat. It's more about how active I am.
Right.
I try to make the healthiest decision as far as food in the moment with whatever resources I have, right?
Sure.
But really, it's about exercise and moving.
And when we spoke before, you've got a daughter. Do you take her out on the trail with you?
Oh, yes.
Do you?
Yes, I do.
You're not going to let her put on 230 pounds, are you?
Oh, no, she's 8, and I send her to wilderness camp where she learns backpacking skills. And, yeah.
Nice.
I plan to take her. My goal is to hike the Appalachian Trail. And that will be the, crowning joy of my life.
So when do you think that's a possibility then for you?
I was hoping to start this spring to make my first attempt, but that didn't work out. So I'm hoping for 2021.
All right, cool. Oh, we'll definitely have to follow you on the show for that.
That would be great.
So how does your diet look like now? You say you don't have to worry about your diet, but there are certain things. And one of my listeners actually sent me a book or told me about a book about the zero sugar diet, because added sugars is a thing that seems to be a problem in our society, doesn't it? Are you very conscious about what your diet is then?
Yes, especially as far as sugar and salt go. I retain a lot of fluid, so I have to keep my sodium levels down.
Right.
But sugar, I get my sugar from natural sources like fresh fruit, right?
Yeah.
I have to kind of stay away from that.
Yeah, when you are eating a lot, I know I developed this incredible peanut butter obsession when I was on the trail, and I've sworn off it for a while. And then my girlfriend and I this morning went down to the local market and we bought my favorite peanut butter with honey in it, and it's
wow,
awesome. That will not make the day, I tell you. It's going to be gone by. It's going to be my Super Bowl treat tonight. I tell you, I'm going to watch the Super Bowl and eat all the rest of my peanut butter almost certainly. So tell me then. So what would you say to people who listen to the show and think I could never hike?
Oh, just get that out of your head right now. Anyone can hike, pretty much. I mean, walking. I had a friend say to me, I could never hike. She's like, I don't mind going for a walk, but I could never hike. I'm like, well, that's all hiking is. It's walking with a much better scenery.
Yeah, it is.
It is. So, that helped to encourage her to get out and hit a trail. So,
well, firstly, I'm glad you allowed me to share your story on the podcast, because I think this is something that people need to listen to and realize that even if they are overweight, most of them hadn't put on 230 pounds over the years. So they probably don't have many of them that don't have as big a problem you had. You've lost so much darn weight. And if the hiking has done that for you, or at least got it going for you, then, that should be encouraging for everybody. So I really appreciate
hope so, yes.
Well, so do I. And I really appreciate you coming on to tell me.
Okay? Oh, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Bye then.
Bye.
How about that? She was so brave to put up those pictures, and I'll be adding them to the show notes. It really looks like a different woman. When she said she first walked 10 steps, I thought she was joking. You can easily get into a bubble believing that what you do is really easy and really accessible to everyone. Well, it clearly isn't, and I felt bad even thinking that 10 steps seems ridiculous. But, well, look what it led to. Brave of her to come on, and what a great story for people in similar circumstances to hear. Now, it's the last chapter of Paul Stutzman's Hiking Through, though I left the end of the chapter to be paired with Paul's moving epilogue for next week's final reading from the book. So, this week, it's all about the 100-mile wilderness. And a heck of a lot of rain. I'll see you next week. Chapter 24, Trials and Tears. After a 3 breakfast, it was time to head into the wilderness. Padre caught a ride back to Karatunk to pick up a mail drop. He'd catch up with us later. The mail drop was actually his floppy straw hat. Padre had left it back at Pine Ellis Lodging, and our hostess had graciously mailed it ahead to the Karatunk post office. Back at the trailhead, I asked Fargo if he wanted to hike back and do the 3 miles he had cut off by Blue Blazing into Monson. He declined. That would put another 6-mile gap between us, and he remembered the last time he'd let that happen. Furthermore, he reminded me he had hiked the traditional route into Monson. The sign announcing our entry into the 100-mile wilderness warned us not to underestimate the difficulty of what lay ahead. It's the longest stretch of wilderness on the AT, and for some reason I had imagined this section of the trail would be 100 miles of easier hiking, with time to enjoy the sheer beauty of Maine. Now I realised there were still more mountains to climb, and those southbound hikers had not been exaggerating. This trail was very, very difficult. Yes, I should have known better, but I had underestimated the 100-mile wilderness. River fords were unusually dangerous. The waters were high and currents swift, a result of all the recent rain. We forded 4 rivers. The wildest one actually turned out to be the safest crossing. A rope strung across the swift current helped to steady us as we waded across. By noon, the rains had started again and continued all afternoon and evening. We stopped at Long Pond Stream Lean-To and quickly shed our wet clothes. A group of French students on a section hike camped nearby. Fargo and I relaxed in our sleeping bags and watched and smelled and envied as the group's sponsors cooked huge bowls of steaming spaghetti. This scenario could turn out to be either a horrible torment or the best thing ever. Finally, those wonderful words. "Do you guys want any leftover spaghetti?" You would never have guessed that Fargo and I had just finished our own evening meals and had eaten an enormous breakfast that morning. We showered them with thanks as we gulped down the treat. "Do you want me to cook some more? We have plenty." Our mouths full of spaghetti, we shouted our affirmative. Soon 2 more large bowls of hot spaghetti slid our way. I asked if there might be any Parmesan cheese. Sure enough, a bowl of grated cheese appeared. The gift of a bowl, 2 bowls of spaghetti, had quickly taken me from the misery of cold rain and muddy trails to a high plateau of satisfaction and contentment. The rain drummed steadily all night, and morning brought no hope that it would end. I gasped and shivered as I climbed into my wet clothes. We planned to hike 20 miles that day. As usual, I'd set a goal for myself and was soon hiking far ahead of Fargo. In 3 days, I wanted to be at the White House Landing Wilderness Camp, a private camp on Pemmadumcook Lake that can be reached only by boat. The camp is a mile off the trail and difficult to find since trail maintainers in this section do not permit any private directional signs on the AT, and hikers have to follow a primitive path through private timberlands. But I'd heard southbounders rave about the £1 hamburgers at the camp, and I was determined to be one of the fortunate hikers who found their way to the lakeshore. Once at the shore, visitors sound an air horn, summoning a boat from the camp that transports guests across the lake to White House Landing. The camp was still 3 days away, but the juicy £1 burger dangling in my future was now every bit as much motivation as monetary bonuses had been in my previous life. And I did need motivation to get through this mud-filled trail. There was no way I'd reach my goal of 20 miles that day. White House Landing my Saturday night also seemed doubtful. By 2 o'clock, I'd climbed 4 mountains, but had covered only 11 miles. Every inch of those miles had been through cold rain, and I was completely drenched, was chilled to the bone, and had lost all feeling in my hands. Partway up Chairback Mountain, the trail passed in front of Chairback Gap Lean-To. I could go no farther. I'd hit a wall. Mentally, emotionally, physically, I was worn out. I wanted to get out of my wet clothes and somehow warm up. Hot food would help, but I needed water, and the spring at this shelter was down a steep, rocky hillside. I started down, but my foot slipped on a slick rock, and I fell, tumbling forward in a complete head-over-heels somersault. A moss-covered rock softened my landing, but for a moment, as I pitched down the slope, I thought my hike was over. The stinging in my elbows gradually subsided, and I continued my search for water. Heavy and constant rains had overwhelmed the spring, making it indistinguishable from the surrounding swamp waters. I filled my water bottle and cooking pot with liquid that already looked like soup. I headed back uphill. At the same place I'd slipped on the way down, my foot now caught on a root stretched across a rock. My tired body had no fight left. I went down hard, sprawling on the rock and spilling the water from my cooking pot. I had an emotional meltdown. I was at the end of my tolerance for this misery. Pulling myself up from the rock, I shook my fist at the heavens and yelled, "God, you're not looking out for me anymore, are you?" I'm a little embarrassed now about my tantrum. The foolish and silly statement came out of sheer frustration, and I knew it wasn't true. I had no serious injuries. Those falls could easily have broken one or every bone in my body. Of course he had protected me. My expensive Gore-Tex rain gear had suffered 3 significant rips. I decided the holes no longer mattered. They might even be beneficial, allowing more moisture to leave than what might creep in. Finally back at the shelter, I attempted to light my stove and boil the swamp water. My fingers were so cold that I could not move them to ignite the lighter. I finally resorted to striking the lighter with the side of my hand, but by the time I switched on the gas on my stove, the lighter had gone out. When I tried to light it again, only a few sparks flew from the tip. Desperation set in and suggested a foolish plan. I turned the gas valve open on my stove and let the lighter's feeble sparks ignite the escaping cloud of propane. It was the only plan that actually worked that day. My desperate act also singed all the hair from my hands and filled the shelter with the aroma of burnt hair. My hands were too cold to feel a thing. I had fire. That was the only thing that mattered. While the water boiled, I removed my wet clothes and pulled on my dry Patagonia long johns and my warm fleece. When Fargo arrived at 3 o'clock, he needed no convincing. His day was also done. By 4, we were in our sleeping bags for the night, happy to be out of the never-ending cold rain. My clothes and shoes were still wet in the morning, and cold. There was nothing to do but pull them on and hike off in the rain. I wanted to make East Branch Lean-To by that night, a 20.7-mile hike. Between me and East Branch were Hay Mountain and Whitecap Mountain. Both were over 3,000 feet, but they were the last 2 mountains of such elevation until I reached Katahdin. All day I plodded over mountains, fighting the muddy trails, determined to do the 20.7 miles that might make possible a hamburger at White House Landing on Saturday night. Toward evening, I crossed Whitecap Mountain in a blowing, misting rain. Later, the trail passed directly in front of Logan Brook Lean-To, and a familiar figure in a sleeping bag propped himself on his elbows and grinned at me. "Fargo, what are you doing in there? I thought we were going to the East Branch Lean-To so we can make it to White House Landing by tomorrow night." The truth was, at that moment, Fargo did not care about East Branch or White House Landing. He'd arrived at Logan Brook shortly before and had met a southbound couple there. Now he was engrossed in telling them trail stories, and their interest in his stories would keep him there for the night. When I arrived, he was in the middle of the Wapiti murder story from back in Pearisburg, Virginia. I'd heard him tell it many times, and every telling was more gruesome than the last. I let Fargo know that I intended to go another 3.5 miles to East Branch. He assured me he would catch up with me the next day. As I left, I encouraged him to spice up the story even more. "Add a bear to it," I suggested. I finally arrived at East Branch Lean-To at 8 o'clock. I was soaked, half frozen and mud-splattered, but I'd achieved my goal, and that was very satisfying. Earlier that day, I'd also crossed the 2,100-mile point and now had only 68 miles remaining of my journey. I peeled off my wet clothes, ate a quick meal, and went to sleep with visions of £1 hamburgers dancing in my head. Cold and wet clothes will wake you up faster than coffee. I had only 21.7 miles to my hamburger. Little Boardman Mountain, just over 2,000 feet, was the highest climb of the day. My shoes were still soaked from the previous day's hike, so there was no need for careful stepping on the flooded trail. Throwing caution to the chilly wind, I splashed and stomped out those 21.7 miles by 4 o'clock. Mayor Tote Road, leading away from the trail to the shores of Pemmadumcook Lake, was not much more than a grassy path. At the edge of the lake, I sounded the air horn and saw a speedboat, my ride to White House Landing, leave the opposite shore. I arrived at 5, just in time to join other hikers for supper. I relished the £1 hamburger and congratulated myself on reaching my goal. I rented a bunk in a small cabin by the lake and washed my clothes in a washtub outside. In the evening light, I paddled a canoe away from the shore and watched the beautiful sunset over Pemmadumcook Lake. The storm clouds had passed, and from my canoe on the quiet lake, I caught my first glimpse of my final goal, the mighty Mount Katahdin. Its name came from the Penobscot Indians and means the greatest mountain. A 74-year-old man shared my cabin, and in 2 days he hoped to finish his hike of the entire Appalachian Trail. I'd complete my hike in 1 season. He would complete his hike after 50 years. Satisfaction in reaching goals does not always lie in the speed with which we achieve them. Sometimes the satisfaction rises from overcoming obstacles and gaining wisdom in our journeys. How often do we dream of a goal, finally reach it, and then wonder, is that all there is? Don't forget to live on your journey. I devoured a stack of blueberry pancakes at breakfast the next morning, took the boat across the lake and found my way back to the AT. Fargo was walking down the trail from his campsite 3 miles short of White House Landing. Good morning, Fargo. Want to hear about the £1 hamburgers and the blueberry pancakes? I believe his answer meant no, but I described them anyway. Fargo and I took a break at the top of Nessuntubunt Mountain, where we could see Mount Katahdin in the distance. Fargo left before I did. I was enjoying that view. Several minutes later, I took off in pursuit, but he was nowhere in sight. I was surprised. Apparently he had speed that had not previously shown itself. Since I had only 16 miles to the Rainbow Stream lean-to, I hiked slower that day. Later in the morning, I heard someone behind me. It was Fargo. What happened to you, I asked. I'd been certain he was ahead of me. I got turned around up on the mountain and went down the other side again. Hey, Fargo, if you do that often enough, you'll make up for all those miles you skipped blue blazing. The AT crosses the west branch of the Penobscot River on a pedestrian walkway on the Abel Bridge. Halfway across, I again had a view of Mount Katahdin looming over the landscape. Only 2 days and 15 miles separated me from that mountain peak and a lifetime goal. At the north end of the bridge is the Abel Bridge campground and camp store. Stopping at the store, Fargo and I rented tent spaces in the campground. Another storm was brewing, so we set up our tents quickly. On our way back to the store to buy food, we saw 2 familiar figures crossing Abel Bridge. Einstein and Franklin were also headed to the campground. I'd never imagined this final scenario. I'd be summiting Katahdin with 3 hiking partners that had contributed so much to my AT experience. In the camp store, we read an entry in the hiker journal that told us Padre had stopped the day before and would be summiting that day. For several hours, the 4 of us sat under the awning of a deserted RV parked in the campground near our tents. It was the perfect time to reflect on our journeys. In 2 days, 4 middle-aged men who had been brought together by the trail would be reaching their ultimate through-hike goal. I was certain that my 3 friends had experienced, learned and changed as much as I had. The trail does that to a person. Occasionally, a campground employee passed on a golf cart and warned us to move away from the RV and its protective awning. Private property, he kept insisting. But we had spent too much time in the woods. The concept of private property held little significance for us that day. We had no intention of leaving our sheltered meeting place, and since the rain was again pouring down, the would-be enforcer had no desire to leave his covered golf cart to remove us. I did not sleep well that night. Perhaps it was the rain pounding my tent or the steady rumble of log trucks crossing the Abel Bridge. More likely, it was a thought I could not ignore. Tomorrow will be my last full day on the Appalachian Trail.